guys, it is Monday, April 2nd, 9 in the morning, and it is actively snowing outside. It is snowing right now, and these are crocuses and daffodils, and it was really nice this weekend because it's spring, and we may have another huge storm this weekend, and it is snowing, and I just can't even comprehend that because it's spring, and this is insane. How is your weather? Is it crazy for you guys right now, too? Snowy interlude out of the way. This is Bonnie from Backward Story, and today we're going to be chatting about the books that I read this past March. I read 13 novels, 1 graphic novel, 2 novellas, and 1 picture book. So we are going to be chatting a little bit about all of the books because a couple of you thought it might be fun to do a video like that you wanted to see from me, and I thought that sounded fun too. So we're going to give it a try. Let me know what you think. And a lot of the books I read this month were digital, but I also had a nice little stack of physical books as well. So I like going back and forth between the two, from physical to digital and back again. I can't completely let go of my physical books, but I can't let go of great ebook deals or advanced reader copies either. So it's a nice blend of the two. The first book I read this month was Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom. I'd never read the series before. I have not seen the movie. The author was coming into town for a signing with his wife, Tahereh, Mafi, and I was trying to get ready for that. So I read this. I borrowed it from the library because it's not something that I normally would pick up on my own, but I wanted to see what it was all about. So I read this first, and then I read the original Shatter Me series by Tahereh Mafi. It starts with Shatter Me, and then there's a novella called Destroy Me, and then there's another novel called Unravel Me, another novella called Fracture Me, and another novel called Ignite Me. So I read all 3 novels and all 2 novellas back to back in the order that they were, and the event was canceled due to snow, so I wound up not seeing either of the authors anyway. But these books, I had purchased them a long time ago on my Nook as a box set. I actually don't read in color like this. I read on my e-ink reader, but I'm doing it in color so that you can see it a little easier. But I bought this a long time ago, and I finally had time to sit down and read it and see what the fuss was about. And I know the new book is out, Restore Me. I have not read that yet. I don't know if I will or not. It's not my favorite series in the world. It didn't go quite the way I thought it would. And I think I'm just over dystopian in general, so there is that too. I also had a chance to read SHAH and the End of Time by Roshani Chokshi this month. This is the first book in the Rick Riordan Presents line that has started coming out with series from authors of own voices with their own mythology and lore being put into a whole new franchise. And it is incredible. I love the first book so much. If you loved Percy Jackson, if you loved the friendship, the questing, the humor of the Percy Jackson books, you were going to love SHAH as well. And I did an awesome interview with Roshani that you can find on my blog as well as on Broadway World, and I'm going to be doing a review for her this coming week as well. But I really enjoyed this book. It just came out last week. Definitely pick it up when you have a chance. This might not be my exact reading order because I was so bad at tracking things on Goodreads this month, but I read Christina Lauren's Love and Other Words, which comes out next week on April 10th, so I will be reviewing it next week for Broadway World. And this was a romance. This is about childhood sweethearts. The main character is a girl who her mother died when she was young due to cancer, and her and her father got a weekend house, and she grew up being friends with the boy next door, and they fell in love in high school, and then they went their separate ways, and now it's been 10 years, and they meet again. So the book actually alternates between the present day now as well as then. So you get to see both points of view and see both relationships as they unfurl and come together twice. Because I was in a contemporary mood, I moved on to Sweet Girl by Cristin Harber, which is a book that I downloaded for free. It should still be a free ebook, actually. And I thought that it was comparable to the Wait For You series by Jennifer Lynn Armentrout and the Rusk University series by Cora Carmack, and I was reading it, and it very, very much fit in line, and it was a great companion to those two series until the very end, when it took a really sharp turn, and it went somewhere I didn't expect in the least. And I knew nothing about the Titan series, but it's actually like military romantic suspense, so you have like snipers and CIA and like bodyguards and all that like high-end espionage stuff going on, and I did not expect that. I was just expecting a sweet college romance series, so it took me a little bit by surprise at the end. But for the most part, this book, if you like Cora Carmack and Jennifer Lynn Armentrout, you're going to like this one too. I couldn't keep my hands off of this one when it came in the mail. It just sounded so cute, and I just started reading it right away because I was too lazy to go upstairs and get the book I was supposed to be reading, and then I couldn't stop reading it. It was so much fun. It is about an autistic girl who is not very good at dating, and somebody tells her that she should practice, and so she takes that literally, and she hires an escort, and she asks him to teach her about romance and dating and kissing and like all of that stuff. And it is just a really fun book. I think a lot of people who like things like The Hating Game are going to like this one too. It doesn't have the frenemies thing going on that The Hating Game has, but it has that romance and that burn to it, and it was just fantastic. So I think this is going to be one that everybody takes into their heart and recommends when people are recommending romance books. So this is definitely one to look out for. It comes out on June 5th. I thought it came out in May, actually. So you have a little bit to wait for it, but definitely TBR it right now because it was really good. Emergency Contact by Mary H.K. Choi. This is one I had not heard of, and then I heard somebody talk about it on BookTube, and then it came in the mail a day or two later for review, and then I started seeing it around a little more online, and I read it, and since I've read it, I've been seeing it around a lot more, especially in Instagram photos, and it seems like this is a book that everybody is reading or talking about right now. So I'm really glad I picked it up. It is a book where the interaction between the two main characters mostly takes place in text speak. They text one another, and they don't actually... She also makes these great lists all the time, but they actually text one another, and they just talk about random things. Like zombie food. What would you eat? And the relationship takes place that way after the two bump into one another and exchange numbers to be one another's emergency contact if anything ever goes wrong. And it has this Eleanor and Park feel to it in terms of how awkward these two characters are with one another and how they are so in their own head that they are worrying about what the other one is thinking, and the other one is thinking incredible things, whereas they are just worried about how they are being perceived. And it reminds me of a couple of moments in Eleanor and Park where she would be worrying about how she looked, and he would just be happy that he was kissing her, and, you know, things like that. And I just think that awkwardness really came through here as well, and it's definitely a book that if you like Eleanor and Park, you're going to like this one too. And we're not done with contemporary yet. I picked up Where I Live by Brenda Rufener, which is something that I had for review that I'd been trying to get to, and I figured while I'm in the mood for contemporary, I'm going to read this one. This is a book about teenage homelessness. It is about a girl who had a really rough life, and after her mother is killed, she tries to find her grandmother, and then her grandmother eventually dies, and she is now homeless, and she is living at her high school, and she has to move around at night so security doesn't catch her, and she just has this very stressful existence, and she doesn't want to reach out to anyone for help. And it is just such an important book on homelessness in general, and it's definitely one that should be in the hands of a lot of students. And I actually want to donate my copy, donate multiple copies to teen homeless shelters so that kids can see they're not alone and that there are ways to get help. And I really like the way everything came together in the end in this one. I read this really fun picture book as soon as the review copy came in the mail. It's not out until June, and I'm actually not reviewing it until August, closer to back to school season, but it's called We Don't Need Our Classmates. It's by Ryan T. Higgins, who previously wrote the Mother Bruce series. And it is about a T-Rex named Penelope who eats her classmates and spits them back out again. And it just is a really good story about making friends and being afraid of going to school for the first time. And it's also a really good story that you could use for kids who are having trouble in the classroom making friends because the fish chomps on her and she realizes that she doesn't like being someone else's food any more than the children do, and so she stops eating her classmates. And so this is something I actually want to share with my nephew. He has a problem in preschool where he is biting because some of the other kids are biting, and that's how he thinks he deals with problems. So this is something that I want him to read because he's dealing with that issue. And I also want my niece to read it in August before she goes to school for the first time because she's worried about going to school. And I think that this is a book that so many kids and so many parents can relate to. Plus it's funny and it's great for story time. So it's definitely one to pick up this back to school season. I was cleaning up and reorganizing books in my room this month, and I came across an arc from 2015 that I never got around to reading. It is The Sculptor by McCloud. And this is an adult graphic novel. I don't want to go too much through it because it definitely has some inappropriate pages for younger readers. But this was a really interesting story. It's about a sculptor who sells his soul to Death, basically. And Death says that he will make his dreams come true so that he can sculpt anything he wants to sculpt, and he can make his dreams of being a sculptor come true because he's fallen on hard times and doesn't have the money for material or anything. But in exchange, he only has 200 days left to live. And so this is about what he decides to do and what he decides to make of his life. And it was actually a really interesting story, and I really liked the implications it had. And I'll be reviewing this one soon, so I will have more thoughts about it then. Next we have Over Raging Tides by Jennifer Ellison. This is a pirate novel. It is Lady Pirates. That's actually the name of the series. And it is this ship called the Lady Luck, and only women are on it. And they come across these two brothers who are shipwrecked after a warship brings them down, and they say that they have access to a map that can take you to any treasure in the world. So against their better judgment, they bring them on board, even though men aren't allowed on the ship. And it was really good. If you like books like Daughter of the Pirate King, or Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo, or To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo, which was my favorite book of the year, or even books like The Girl from Everywhere by Heidi Heilig, then you are going to like Aaron Ash by Alex Liddell. That's another really good book that takes place on the seas. You're going to love Over Raging Tides, which just came out. I loved the author's first series, which was about elemental magic, and I really enjoyed this book too, and I'm already looking forward to the sequel. I reviewed this one last week on tour, and you actually still have a chance to win a copy, so head on over to my blog, A Backward Story, and you can enter to win right now. You have, I believe, most of the month for that one. I finally got a chance to read Elementals, Ice Wolves by Amie Kaufman, which just came out this past week. And I actually thought it was going to be a book about elemental magic, and it actually is a little different. It is about shape-shifting creatures who have elemental abilities based on what they are. So it is about twins, and the boy can transform into an ice wolf, and so he has ice magic. And the girl can transform into a scorch dragon, and so she has fire magic. And this is a world where the wolves and the dragons had a war, and they don't like one another, and the wolves think that the dragons are going to come and start a war again. And so these twins, when they find out that they can shift and transform, neither one of them thought they could, and it is very rare for a family to have two different transformations within the same family. So they are on separate sides now, and they are torn apart, and they are trying to find their way back to one another throughout the book. So this is middle grade. It just came out last week, and it is a series, and I'm already excited to see where they go in the next book. And the last book I read this past month was Sky in the Deep by Adrienne Young. I did a guest post with Adrienne just yesterday, and I will be reviewing this book later on this month. It doesn't come out until April 24th, so I will be reviewing it closer to release. But this is a book that is about Vikings, and it is from that time period where clans clashed against one another, and they have blood feuds, and it is about a girl who her brother died in the war when she was younger. She watched him die, and she goes into battle, and she realizes that he is still alive, and he is now fighting with the enemy, and he doesn't want to see her die, so he takes her captive, and now she finds herself in his village with the enemy, the Riki, and she wants to escape, and there's so much going on in this book, and I don't really want to spoil things, but I will review it later this month. But it was a really interesting read. It has a nice slow burn romance to it, and it talks about differences and coming together to work against a common problem, and it also really highlights how hard it was to live back then. So there's so much stuff going on, and it's definitely worth picking up later on this month and checking it out. And if you want a really small sneak peek about my April, I've already started a new book. I started reading The Way You Make Me Feel by Maureen yesterday, and I'm probably going to finish reading it today. I am about halfway through it, and so far it is about a girl who... she's a prankster, and she gets nominated for prom queen, and she thinks it's funny, and she pulls a prank at prom that goes wrong, and her and the other girl involved in the prank wind up working on her dad's food truck for the summer as punishment to pay the school back for the damage they caused. And I'm at a scene right now where she is going on a date for the first time with this boy that works at a cafe place across the street, and they actually go to his grandparents' house to eat because of something going on there. And it's just a really fun book right now, and I really like hearing her humor and seeing where she lives and how she interacts and things that she loves. And it's really a great own voices book, and I am really enjoying it so far. So I look forward to telling you more about it. I believe it comes out in May, but it could be in June. So I will be talking about this more when it comes out. I just got the download, and I couldn't wait to read it because I had been hearing so many people talk about how much they were looking forward to a new book from the author, and I haven't read her before, so I decided to check her out. So this is everything I read this month, and let me know which books sound the most interesting to you, which ones you might actually want to read based on those short summaries. Is this something that you think that I should do again? What books have you read this month that you would recommend? And I'm always looking for something new to read, so maybe I'll read it in April. That's all from me today. I will talk to you guys again really soon. Bye.